questions now. Time. Do please stick your hand up. Anything at all. I'm sure you've all got lots. Yes. First hand up. Well done. Yeah.
Thanks for organising this. It's really terrific. I'm interested in the psychology of what you go through when you're running insane distances. I know when I run moderately insane distances, there's a lot of lies that I tell myself in my psychology to tell me that everything's okay. What are like some of the tricks that you use or the lies that you tell yourself to keep going all right?
Let's go first.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. Lies. If I'm in a semi-good mood, I might say, "Oh, you're good at downhills. You'll enjoy this bit." And then sort of halfway down, you're like, "This is rubbish." I haven't got a good answer for that. Or plan some treats. Whether it's usually a snack-based treat, or sometimes it's music. Actually, like at UTMB, I always used to say you can put the music on either at half time, either at roughly halfway, or when your legs start to hurt. So I'd almost look forward to my legs hurting, so that I can get music in there. And that would almost distract from it. So they're, treats rather than lies, although lies are fine.
I take it back a stage though, why do you feel like that? Is it because it's probably, if you bring it back a step, you're not eating enough? Every time we see someone suffering at a race, you take a couple of hours back, and for a lot of them further than that, and the fueling's off. And people think they've taken a lot on, but that far into the race, you've really kind of lost track of where you sort of gave up / lost track. And the perception is that the calories are piling in, and the reality is so different. When you actually ask people to analyse it afterwards, they stalled, and that leads to that feeling. I will say I can't wait for my curry and 4 pints of ice cold Cobra, the week after the race. I think the other main trick, and this definitely worked at TDG, was it's never more than the next col or the end of the next descent or the next checkpoint. It's always a fragment of the overall, whether that's a 50k and you're running K loops, okay, when's the next 5k up, or it's you've got to break it down so it's smaller component parts. But if you start to get into a negative headspace, almost every time it's bad pacing, bad fueling, really try and sort of say, have I eaten in the last 30 minutes? And if the answer's no, the answer is no. That's what we see so often. And at the track, you can literally see it happening. You can see the runners who are just giving up on the food. They take it, and then it goes in the bucket on the far bend. In goes the full gel packet into the bin, and the race just unravels, and you can literally see it happening.
So on your nutrition front, I improved mine. I actually did go and see a nutritionist. It's not a case of I didn't want to eat food, it was more of a case I didn't feel well. And the first race I did, although I still got a British record, God knows how, I literally just had gels. And I'd go to my aid station and I'd say I don't want anything else, and I would try to force a gel, and it was blistering on the top of my mouth. So if you have too much of one thing, that's not good. It was the Hummer gels. I thought I'll try those because they're natural puree. But what it did to my stomach, how it made me feel, I thought I've got to get this nipped. And the reason I've done so well this year is I've spent a lot of time looking at nutrition, because it's the first thing that people don't consider. They think they could just eat anything. One, you need to find what you enjoy. So I did have my Marmite sandwiches. For those who love Marmite, it's amazing with tiger bread. I had Marmite sandwiches, then I had a few gels, which I don't particularly like, but I knew I needed to get quite a lot of carbs in. And I was mixing and matching it, and like what James said, I was giving myself like treats, and every 30 to 40 minutes I knew I was getting something, whereas before, the race I'd done the year before, the same event, I didn't plan it like that. It was almost every 2 hours, and it was too long, and you don't realise, like with the Grand Union, I actually said I didn't have enough food. I could tell. I actually started taking someone else's food because I could see I was running out. Even though the pace was slower, I actually thought this gap, normally 2 hours, would take 15, 16 miles. When you're running a lot slower, it's actually taking 3 hours, so you need more food, so even at a slower pace. So I learned so much with eating. And then playing music as well. Again, that was a treat. When you're going through the night, I would put really hard music on. So it would almost be like I'm going out clubbing, and I would play the tunes that reminded me of when I went back in the teenage days. So it's giving yourself something that makes you feel good. Yeah. So food and music and little mind games. Yeah.
And Anna, we've already established that you are the queen of positivity. And so,
well, I was about to be a bit contrary.
Excellent.
Compared to these guys, I mean, I truly struggle to eat, and I think what has changed over the number of races I've done, it's just not worrying. And I think that sort of depth of experience starts to play through, and you stop panicking about I haven't eaten. And I mean, you're absolutely right, everybody's right, the more you can get in, probably the faster you go. But it actually isn't the defining moment. You can just keep working through it. And I've done many races on virtually nothing, and you can still do perfectly well. So I think your psychology changes the more races you've done as well. You've just got this depth of experience to draw, and you've been there before, and you know how to get through it and how to get out the other side. And yes, I think you do have a pride, but you know that you'll stop.
Yeah. but I love
that's my big takeaway.
I love that thing though of
Practice and training.
of not worrying, because stress is stress, whether it's the stress of on the muscles or the cycle, and that's tiring. So the more you can take out the stress, then that sounds amazing. Yeah, so thank you for that. More questions? Anybody else? At the back there.
Sorry, it's actually a question for Sam. You did the track 100. And then 3 weeks later, you did 10k PBs. How do you train for like two completely different distances and do so well?
I think probably James answered it earlier. I think it's versatility. So if you look at long distance running, everyone thinks you have to run long to train, but I kind of treat my last race as the long training run. So effectively, I'm kind of doing marathon training. But when people say, well, what season are you in? I train all through the year and I race all through the year. So it's regardless, so I could turn up and do a 5k, and then I could do a 10k, and actually I ran my quickest in 8 years, a 5 mile in Marlow where I used to live, off the back of doing the 100k and the 100 mile around the track. And I think it's again a little bit what Anna said about the confidence, not being stressed out, turning up without feeling any pressure. And I still do Track Tuesday, a training session. I'll still do maybe 2 speed sessions a week, and then the long runs that I do on a Sunday can be anything from 90 minutes to 4 hours, depending on what I'm training for. So I'll always have something that I'll be training for, and then, if you feel good on the day, sometimes I don't feel it. I know when I turn up to a race, and this is where you have to get out of that negative space and tell yourself, just go for it, see what things work out. And I genuinely didn't think the Grand Union, Trevor was with me, who's down here, and we were boxing in the gym the night before. I felt really stressed out, I couldn't sleep, and then I got up into the start line. I thought this could go anyway, and then what reminded me, because I had all my friends there, I better get this shit done because they're all there waiting for me, and I knew they were going to be at certain points, so actually that helped me carry on. And then I felt so good after. I went and did another 10k race and ran really well. So
I think that it's just really important to remember that there are people like Sam, and I would say Mike Wardian is in a similar bracket. Their ability to show up every weekend and do everything from 5k to 100 miles and be at the top. And if I tried to do that, it would last 2 weekends. So the thing that Sam's got is a decade plus of training week in, week out, consistency that's built over, a massive volume of time. And then essentially, I had a really good analogy the other day, essentially just fine-tuning at the last minute to the thing you're pushing towards, rather than saying, you put 10 days of training in for this race. You've been training for 15 years,
correct.
And then you're tweaking it at the last minute to that specific thing. But the aerobic base, that endurance base, that's the foundation on which Sam's able to go from one to the next so fluidly. So there's no shortcut to that, really.
Yeah, please don't start taking up long distance stuff all of a sudden.
And the longer you're doing it, the more resilient you tend to be to these things, Yeah.
I skip, I do dancing, boxing, I do other stuff as well. I've just got a lot of energy. Not everyone has it, and it makes me feel good when I run. So.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the thing, isn't it? And a lot of what we've heard tonight is about learning to understand yourself, be that the way you run, the way you train, the way you eat, and feeling comfortable within yourself, and that perhaps can be that gateway to finding your sort of biggest potential.
When you stop worrying about what other people are doing, when I stopped doing that and I started worrying about what I was doing, honestly everything changed.
Which is why you're not on Strava, because that's one of the worst things.
I'm going to be really honest, I'm not on Strava because I don't want people watching me. Sometimes being authentic and being myself, I know who I am, I know my friends. James will know when I turn up in my race that I will want to do something special. He'll normally ask for a race brief, but I don't want the pressure, and I find for some people Strava is too much pressure. I don't want to be trying to run around the same loop someone is to run faster than them. It would break me. I would get injured if I did too much speed work. That's just me. But I think when you focus on yourself, my training would definitely not work for someone else. Like, I could not do what Anna does, I couldn't do what Damian does, but that's what makes us unique, and I like the way it works for me. I probably do too much. I do a lot of classes as well. I love good old Les Mills class as well. But I do it for my mental health as well, and I like the variation, so.
Brilliant.
Anyway, hopefully that answers your question.
Just enter from there.
Yeah, we're talking about sustainability and also just having fun. So if you had a day in the UK, where would you go to have
Good
fun?
question.
Right.
Well, for me, I think Snowdonia has become my favourite place, I think. I don't want to get too bored of the Paddy Buckley round, but I'd maybe go and do bits of it. Maybe not the bit where I did that somersault when I was with you. Yeah, I love Snowdonia.
What is it though about Snowdonia in particular?
It's a lot quieter than the lakes. The weather's maybe less predictable. There's some exciting rocky bits. Yeah, some big climbs, and you get up there and there's just no one else around. You see out to sea. It's just great. It's cracking. Big lakes, things like that.
Yeah. Anna.
I was going to say the lakes, but actually I was thinking about it as you were talking, Damien. I'd go to the Cheviots on a sunny day, because you can actually run there. The views are amazing, and I'm not into hugely gnarly terrain. That's why I said a sunny day. Non-rocky day. I've seen it in both times. So yeah, the Cheviots, because the lakes is amazing, and you get lots of the good stuff too. But actually, Cheviots is amazing.
Bedford International Athletics. I would say either the Southwest Coast Path, right down on the arc of attrition course, or the Lake District. For me, probably around Grassmore or Wasdale in the Lake District. I mean, I just think there's magic. I'm a huge fan of Snowdonia. I'm a huge fan of I haven't done enough in Scotland to talk about it, but huge fan of what I've seen up there. But for me, the lakes has a special kind of magic. But you do have to pick the right place at the right time. As Damien's alluded to, you can get that wrong and find yourself on quite busy tracks. And I do like solitude. So yeah.
And Sam, I mean, obviously, other than the tow path in Hemel Hempstead.
I actually do like trail though. I love parts of the Thames Path, but for me it's anywhere that's got like a forest. So I wouldn't specifically define it to a certain place. I like running through the woods, and you get a little bit of that on the Ridgeway. You get a little bit on the Thames Path, and I think that's why when I moved, I just moved for a different part of the river. I literally, after the Thames Path, went, oh, quite like around that area, I think I'll move there, and that's how I ended up in Oxford, purely down to the River Thames. And I like trees, fresh air, by the river. I wouldn't want to live too close to there. So yeah,
all of our runners end up moving on to our courses.
We do.
Something that happens.
It does. 2016 did it to me, and then literally in the June after I'd done the race, I think I lived there.
Amazing.
But I love the Ridgeway and I love the Thames Park, so close to home.
Brilliant. Great question. There was another. Come to you in a moment, Rich.
Probably not for James, this one. Those of you that do strength training, so how and when do you fit it into your training without it sort of taking away from your running?
I must admit, I've done a few different things over a few years, but at the moment I do like live remote classes, and so they're dictated by when they're on. So that's usually 7:15 in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Come and join us. So I've realised I'm more motivated by knowing I've got some friends tuning in at the same time. I find that, more likely to get it done. There are a few theories. I don't know how much this is really studied, the combination of the two. I say most people I've spoken to, strength and conditioning coaches, for example, suggest you are better off doing it on the day when you do a workout, or I'm not sure about a long run, I'm not sure about that, but as a workout, so that some of your easier days are genuinely easy. But I have seen some other coaches say, do your strength workout on your easy day. That doesn't make as much sense to me. And certainly, ideally, most people have one day completely off, and I would say, almost don't do don't do any of that sort of stuff. But other people might have different views, and I'm not sure there's a study on that, if I'm honest. But I think for individuals, it's when are you actually going to do it. That's the key thing, because most runners love running and don't necessarily love the non-running bits. But I think increasingly we're seeing it seems worthwhile. So yeah, when are you actually going to do it is probably the best thing. But do you know what other people think, other than James?
So, I mean, I actually hate doing it, but I know it's essential being an old lady. So we tend to do the sort of endurance training in the mornings, and then just try and do 3 times a week or 2 or 3 times a week. Usually I prefer twice, Rich prefers 3 times. But and then it's the afternoon, evening, because they're heavy weights, and I just don't like lifting anything too heavy in the morning. So that's.
Yeah. And does that kind of fit around work stuff as well, like that? I mean, is that a way to balance everything out as well?
Yeah, because it just gives you that bit of time between doing the training in the morning and then doing it in the evening. So if we don't do the long stuff, we never do it. If you put it off, we find.
Yeah.
Once the day kicks off, we just do it. Whereas you can fit in half an hour, 40 minutes later on. Even if it's in front of the TV, you can chuck some weight out. So that's we do it in the evening.
Yeah, interesting. Sam?
I do my minimum 3 times a week, so I typically don't do it on a track Tuesday because that's normally when my speed work is, and I don't want to hammer my legs for when I'm going to go to the track. So I'll do it Wednesday, Friday and a Sunday, and I'd normally do it after a Sunday run because I don't care about trashing my legs, and then I know by the time it gets to Monday it's normally an easy run, and then Tuesday will be the harder session. So my strength work will be leg work and basically working through all of my past injuries, strengthening my calves, my quads, and working on different parts, and I try to vary it. And then when I do go to the gym, which is every day, when I'm doing some cross training, I'll pick a couple of exercises to do as well as the core I do every day. I try to vary it because ultimately most runners will only do core and strength work when they're injured, and I don't want to go down that route. I have plenty of them.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Rich had a question.
Given the awareness of sustainability, I've realised how many trainers I get through, and I've got sort of wear bits, and I wear them out, and I get injured if I carry on wearing full trainers. They are nothing like the mileage that you guys ride. How do you guys kind of get your head around that bit? Any advice, to us, say, getting through piles of trainers? Because hearing that it takes 100 years plus to break them down, all the adhesives, etc.
What's happening to your shoes is the sole unit breaking down, then you find you're not getting the cushioning anymore. Is that the issue?
Well, it's wear. So lugs, for example. So on my heels it wears, and so therefore I've got so therefore on my legs that's one bit. But it depends on other trainers. Then the upper goes as well. So it depends on on brands. I'm trying different things. The Innovate or Adidas, etc. So the things wear, and so that's the bit where I go. It's worn out. I try and kind of keep it going, but then I get injured. So
yeah.
So I was just interested in terms of that, but also the fact that we will spend a lot of money on shoes, and there's a lot of landfill, so to speak, on that bit. What to do?
Yeah, it's really, from an industry perspective, it's really frustrating, and especially when some of these brands tell us, after 300 to 500 miles, we should be throwing our shoes out, which is just terrible advice. And I've looked at lots of studies to try and see if there's a study linking injury to shoes, and there's nothing conclusive. But I was chatting to a very good runner the other day, and I'm getting, since I've been more conscious, thanks to sort of Dan and Charlotte at Rerun Clothing, they've spread a lot of awareness. I've been more conscious about trying to make my shoes last, and most of mine will last 1,000 miles or so. But I was chatting to a very good runner just this week, and he said he's a bigger guy, after 300 miles or so, he reckons they are worn out. So it is pretty individual. The terrain as well plays a part, your technique, your weight. So really, the industry needs to step up a bit and make shoes that can. There was at least 3 bands making recyclable shoes, but it's so early in that stage that we don't know whether they truly are or not yet. But let's see. But at least they're trying. And then durability is a good thing to aim for. It's a problem.
if you're losing lugs off your shoes, you're probably. There's 1,000 miles on the open fell. Okay, fair enough. The wet dry thing is an issue, but most of the time, I live 20 minutes up the road. We're running on a combination of road trail. It's never 100% trail. It's hardly ever 100% road either. We're often wearing trail shoes that the rubber is not made to withstand tarmac. So it's about trying to find a shoe that has a durable rubber compound on the sole that will last for what you're training on, will extend the life of the shoe. So we push people to certain models of certain brands depending on what they're training. The first thing we ask is what shoe you're currently wearing and what's your training ground. The other issue is people don't clean their shoes properly, and that wet dry thing, especially through a British winter where they often get waterlogged and full of mud, the shoe is breaking down, because the first thing you want to do when you finish your run is take your shoes off and go inside and ignore your shoes. Some people are a bit more, they're used to handling bikes and stuff through the winter, and they'll stuff newspaper in them. Just looking after your kit a bit better, rinsing them through, drying them properly, it makes a massive difference. But if you actually look into the durability of the sole compounds with regards to lugs, that is a much more solvable problem than uppers breaking down. Dan and Charlotte have got this tape now, I can't remember the name of it, but they're looking at, how to make uppers last longer. Some brands have uppers that notoriously fall apart in certain places, and it tends to be where if a brand stitches and glues the upper to the component part around the side, it tends to stand up a lot longer than the ones that either just stitch or just glue. That's where you'll find that the first thing that goes is the little toe out of the side of we've all seen it. Get your shoes fitted is the only other thing I'd say. We see a lot of people come in with very narrow shoes on quite wide feet. Salomon as a brand have got narrower over the years, to the point where the Speedcross 6 is frankly such a specific shoe now. The biggest selling trail shoe of all time is now really not suitable for about 90% of customers. So if you're finding the uppers breaking on the side where your foot splays, it's because it's too narrow for your foot. So the right fit, the right compound on the base for what you're training on, particularly on the road, and then making sure you're buying a shoe with a stitched and glued upper if that's breaking down first. Yeah.
You could do what I do. I just give them to my mum. My mum has got the best shoes. She wears all my Vaporflies. She's got all these luminous colours. So rather than throw them away. My mum goes dog walking with Vaporflies. Mum comments about her amazing shoes. No, I tend to, like with the Vaporflies, they were giving you, they were saying a range of maybe 400 or 500 miles. I think if you're light on your feet, which I am, I can last a bit longer, but I genuinely start to notice when they start to wear away, because I tend to wear them at the side. I think it's years of doing ballet in a plie position and wearing the outside, so when I can see that happening, rather than throw them away, they either go in to a bag for my mum, which she loves. It's like Christmas when she gets all my trainers. Some are worn more than others, and then she'll put them into the train bins after, so they get taken. So I'd like to think they actually end up with someone. They probably have got a lot of Vaporflies, because I wear a lot of them, but I alternate. I have a training pair and a race pair.
Yeah. Brilliant. Phil?
Has any of the panel got something on their bucket list that's not a race, an FKT or British record?
Yeah, I would say so. just like, so I have a map, an Ordnance Survey square that's centred on my house. You pay like £3 extra and they'll send you the sheet for your house. And over time, I've tried to run every road and trail on that map. So during lockdown, like the fluorescent lines were spiralling further and further out. When you actually add up the cumulative distance of footpath and road that you have access to from your front door within that very small area, it is massive. So I really enjoyed just getting that map out and going, I'm going to go over that way today. The only problem is in the corners of Stevenage, Luton, and then the top of the hill. So I've got some nasty days. And also the A1 and the M1, which could be a completely different kettle of fish. But I did a 4.5k, it wasn't even a race. I went to Luton Airport at 3 in the morning a couple of months ago to do an organised out and back on the runway, just so I could highlight Luton Airport runway. I think that really gives me a bit of a, like on a shitty winter's day, and you're just like, do I really, really want to go out today? All of a sudden there's a different reason, there's a bit of an adventure, and I don't know, it works fine.
Anna?
I actually really like hiking, if I'm honest, rather than running. So I want to do the sort of the route that goes from Geneva down to Nice, and just hike that lot. So having the time just to go and spend 2 or 3 weeks, but not doing it intense. Not being intense.
Oh, what a great question. All I could really think of was, this is going to curse it, touching wood, but yeah, I'm uninjured for 5.5 years. I take a lot of satisfaction and pride of keeping that going longer. If I can get 6 years and then, but yeah, every time I say that out loud, I feel stupid because I'm just asking for it. Aren't I remember I used to brag about never DNFing and then look at that. So yeah, that'll do for now until I think of something as good as these two guys.
Well, I've got something actually, if I may. So I decided I wanted to do some runs which were for a purpose rather than a race. So I've started running from my home now to places of importance in my life. So where I first lived and schools, and it's going to culminate next year. I'm trying to run so I live in Leighton Buzzard, funnily enough, but I'm going to try and run from there to Swansea, and through my own route and raise a bit of money. But part of what I enjoy about that is the planning. Actually, James talking about his map. I'm sure in a room full of ultra runners there are a load of map nerds out there who will sit and look at ordnance survey maps for hours upon an evening, getting super. And I do, and it's the planning. Looking, oh, I could go that way. But of course, it can go wrong. I did a run to Oxford from Leighton the other day, and it was meant to be 35 miles and ended up at 38 because of footpath diversions. But also one particularly important footpath, talking about motorways, there was one that did a little tunnel underneath the M40, which I had to go through. It was completely covered with brambles. It was like for about 20 minutes, it was like I was in the Barclay Marathons. I had to cut my way through all these brambles, and I ended up having to go through a stream up to my knees to get under this tunnel, which was quite exciting, but not quite what was planned. But in a way, that sort of speaks to that sense of adventure, doesn't it? And finding something with meaning and purpose, which, so there we are. Yes, Rob.
Going back to your first races, the biggest lesson, good, bad, indifferent?
Biggest lesson?
Mine's probably learning to get through hitting the wall. I could never really understand when guys typically do that more than women, but bonking in a race is not a pleasant place. I've done it a couple of times in these last couple of years, maybe with the long ones, maybe once in London Marathon, and I remember getting to 19 miles feeling amazing, and I was on for I think 2:37 at that time, turned the corner at about 20 miles, and I can honestly say I felt like people were calling me and they were in India. I couldn't hear them. I don't know how I got through the last 6 or 7 miles to the finish. That was an awful experience, and it was me running out of energy, so that was another little lesson learned. I did still do it again. It did happen again. And then another one was when I ran James's Thames Path. I ran the first section quite quick, the 50 miles. I felt absolutely amazing. Went through Henley smiling at everyone. I thought, I'm not feeling so good here. And I knew I needed to get the food in, but it was learning to get through that process. And once you have hit the wall, you can come out the other side. So for me, it's learning to deal with those and learning how your body operates and trying to not put yourself in those positions again. For me, it is.
Yeah, I think mine might be a little bit similar. Definitely my first ultra had this, it was a 2-day thing, and it was quite near the end, and I was just hiking it in. I just thought I couldn't possibly run. No one in my circumstances could possibly run. My legs are too sore, my feet hurt. Probably hadn't eaten enough. Everything was. I was angry at everything, and then I sort of saw the finish line, and I was jogging along happily at 8-minute miles or something, which feels very fast at that stage. But yeah, just that incredible turnaround of like getting some positive news, and off I was running again. Doing the exact opposite of what I've just told myself, and I'm still playing around with that and trying to suss that out really. But a similar message to Sam. That like, I don't know, when you think you're done, you're not necessarily. Get a couple of jelly babies in you and who knows.
So I suppose from an ultra perspective, it's try not to pack everything in your rucksack. Because I'm just serious. The first race we did, I literally had everything. I'd read about someone getting hypothermia, so I had about 5 layers, loads of kit, loads of water, and you have to carry it. And I see people doing these races with these massive packs, and you just think, are you really, really going to need all of that? And you're carrying it, and it's so tiring. It makes such a big difference. So I suppose it was that, and also make sure your shoes are comfortable, because if your feet go, the rest is just deeply miserable. It doesn't really matter how fast and fit you're feeling or whether you get the food in. If your feet hurt, it's the end. So I think those are the 2 massive lessons I learned in our first ultra. don't carry too much and wear comfy shoes.
And mine's really simple. It's just body glide. I mean, I can't like the first dozen races I did. I just tried everything, and Jesus, it just always ended badly. And then I discovered body glide, and it changed my world. And honestly, like, if there's two things I'll take out on a run, it's some body glide and what I call a shit kit. Like, there's just we've been been around the block too many times, and yeah, if I'd had body glide a bit earlier in my career, it would have let me enjoy things a lot more. That's for
You
sure.
can still do it though. I was looking at the marathon.
Oh,
pictures
yeah.
And you
Oh,
see
yeah.
the blood on
Yeah.
the white
Yeah.
tops, and you think,
Yeah.
oh my God, no.
Yeah. All right. I reckon we've got time for 2 more quick questions. Somebody else? Yes.
If, for example, you have an 18-year-old son who was very keen on journeying into this ultra scene, what would be your one piece of advice you'd give him
Yeah.
to ease his transition? Because possibly he's tried and he's been injured for a few months since then. But what would be your piece of advice you'd give him to help him smooth his journey?
So when we did this, and I mean, these were girls, so they were fully grown, and we knew they were fully grown. And I think there is a bit of a difference there with the boys, and they do develop slightly later. So I think, first of all, is he fully grown? That would be my first question. The way we did it, and it's just the way we did it, was we built them up with hiking. And we gradually did lots and lots of hiking with them, and then we did back-to-back weekends with them. So we do, I don't know, first of all it was a 10 and a 10, and then it was a 15 and 15. And so we built them up really, really gradually. Then we took them on the terrain, made it quite specific to the race that they were meant to be doing. And then they did a lot of volunteering, so they could see it from the other side. And then once my eldest, my little one, got really bad anemia for a different reason, so she couldn't race. But my big one, when she did it, she was able to go back into that mindset of remembering all the people that she'd sorted out and got them back out of the aid stations. And when she was really sick, and she was able to go, well, I've seen other people, and actually you never DNF in an aid station. You always get up, you always walk out, you get out of that chair. So I think it was the combination of the two. It was building up, but it was, and I even say this to adults, it's like, do the hiking and spend the time on your feet. You just heard these two really experienced guys say, we spend most of the time hiking in the TTG. If you can't hike, you're not going to get anywhere. And you can finish an ultra with hiking, and then pick a race, which is just fantastic. So my big one, she did do Javelina, which was loops. For the first one, which as a parent was fantastic, because we knew that there was a get-out clause every 20-25 miles, which was really important. We didn't want to be miles away from where she was going to need to get back to. And then the second race she did on her own was the Lakeland 50, which is a massive community, and there's going to be a bunch of walkers, and there's going to be people, and people will look after her. So as mum, I knew that she'd be absolutely fine and having a ball, and she did. So I think that's the combination of choosing then the right race. So does that? I don't know.
No, that's good. That's good. Thank you.
I think you also got to reflect back on that aerobic base we mentioned. Was he run? If he run through school, has he been in the track teams, cross country teams? He'll have that resilience. But I think it's also important to make it consistency the key. That's true with adults too, but even more so with kids. He obviously loves it. That's the main thing. But that passion sometimes is the problem, because it's always, and we still deal with this with adults a lot, I'll beat the training plan. Now, I'll write this down, this is sustainable, I'm going to put my rest here, and I'm going to run this session. But they feel good, they're excited, and before you know it, they've beaten several sessions by 20%, and in their mind they're winning, but their body's unravelling and they're not getting the recovery time. So with the younger ones, you have to watch that. You have to try and get them to, and it's so hard because they're so desperately keen, and they're seeing all these incredible people doing these incredible things and thinking that's normal, but they're not seeing the 10 years of groundwork that went into that performance. So it's just trying to encourage them to make it as sustainable as possible, that week in, week out, month in, month out is how they're going to make it the best for them. But if they enjoy the training, then that's the main thing, right? You just want to keep them engaged. We've got a slight issue in this country with the permitting, where it's 45k plus. You've got to be 20 or older to be covered on UK Athletics Insurance. Some races don't get permitted by the governing body, totally fine. Others do. So that's a barrier, which isn't a great one, if I'm honest, because I think that policy probably needs looking at and adapting slightly. That sort of changes the types of events they can get into as well. as you're probably finding. So sometimes it's just getting them in the right event. Lakeland 50 is a great one because they can do it a little bit younger. It is an adventure. There's a 24-hour cut-off. As Anna said, lots of people are walking the whole route, so the pressure to race it and beat a cut-off isn't there. It is a hard route, it is a big day out, but very rewarding.
Is it easy to get into? Like,
As long as you're-
like,
Is it lottery now?
It's bad.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, you've got orienteering events and other things that puts a bit of competitive spin into
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Shorter distances, that's what I'd recommend. I mean, my children aren't interested in running, but if they were, you've got the orienteering, you've got other routes you can take, and then just building up the distance. I know for me, when I did a marathon, going to 50k, that was a good start, and then you go from 50, and then the trail stuff takes away the pressure. I often find that as soon as you're doing road races, it's like rhino stampedes, and it's quite competitive and actually more dangerous than going off-road. I like the idea of going to smaller events where they're a lot more low-key, but to your point about going around loops, that would be something I'd recommend because you know where your children are or young adults. Safe.
No. Brilliant. Any more? Last question there, right in the front. That's all.
Yeah, I was
Perfect.
just wanting to know, when you approach these big runs like UTMB or on that level of run, do you have a plan B, C, D in your mind before the start line, or do you think, well, plan A's failed, so I'm just bailing? Like, is finishing more important to you than necessarily winning or placing?
Changes, doesn't it, during
Yeah.
the race?
Finish would always be plan B or C or D, I think. Except I've walked off plenty of 24-hour races where I went in to qualify and it wasn't happening, and I was behind. I'm not going to burn a match on staying out there for another 12, 13, 14 hours because I'm there for one. I don't need to finish that 24-hour. I'm Is that good or bad? I don't think it's bad on its own, but I think you can get into a bad habit of checking out too early if your motivations aren't always right.
Yeah.
And on reflection, I tried too many times and my motivation wasn't right every time. It was, I'm going to go or I'm going to go. Whereas now it's a completely different kettle of fish. Like the races and challenges I'm taking on, it's almost purely about finishing. There's almost no competitive angle at all, and I'm enjoying it a hell of a lot more. But I mean, I don't know. Do you guys ever go in? It's like I'm going to compete. If it's not happening, I'm walking off. No.
So I
No.
On the trail.
Well, once when I went for the Penaway record this year, I knew like if it wasn't on, I wasn't going to run another 60 miles just to get ahead of it because I'd done that before.
Yeah.
But that's the only time I think I've had that recognition before. Normally I'd go into a race with A, B and C goal. A would be like pretty ambitious, like a bit more than I know is possible. B would be what hopefully is realistic, and C would be probably just get it done, finish. Yeah. What about you, Stuart?
You see, I think I've come to it so late that any great finish is just always a deep surprise. So, so I think one of the things I've really, really learned is that I must go at my pace. I must do what I want to do. And actually, in the longer stuff, people just fall by the wayside. And suddenly you go from being 10th to being first. You're like, how did that happen? And things like the spine, you really see that day one. I might be 5 hours back. But you just don't even think about that until you get to that. So it's who's there at the finish is who wins. That's my one learning of the last sort of few years.
And that's the benefit of the long distance, because James will say when we went and did the Track 100 this year, there was some of the greatest there. There was Camille Herron, some of the big stars, and actually I felt like a very small fish in a massive pond, but I stuck to my plan. I had A, B and C. I always have A, B and C, and mine are always realistic goals. I know what I'm capable of doing, and I said to James, because we were talking on email, I wanted the 12-hour record and I wanted the 100 mile. I wanted to beat my own time. That's not to say there wouldn't have been someone there that could have done it, but I put my sunglasses on, blocked everyone else out, pretended I was on the track on my own. They started with, was it 16? And how many finished?
3.
One wheelchair athlete that kept motoring through. The wind was really strong. It was awful. It was like a wind tunnel. My poor friends were all being blown through there. And do you know what I remind myself of? All of the volunteers that are there, they're all there. I might not be taking their food, but people are giving up a huge amount of time. So that reminds you how humble it is. They're there watching you, and it is like a hamster wheel. And like what Anna said, I knew that slowly catch the monkey. I stuck to my pace. I told my coach what I was going to be doing. I had the nods from people. I knew when I was going to eat, so I almost gave myself things to concentrate on. And when I started seeing people dropping off, I'm going to freely admit it made me feel amazing. Even though I felt like crap myself, I went through. I have a really weird strategy. I run quite quick to start with. James will have watched this. In the middle, I tend to feel like I'm being swallowed up by the track, and I feel quite crap, and I'm literally going in and out of the toilets because it's a distraction technique, and then I pick myself back up again because I can see the end in sight. I mean, the difference is with the track races, the finish you keep going through all the time until you've finished your race. And then when you're doing a 24-hour event, I stepped away from Battersea. I did not feel well from the start. My friends were there, and I got into 19 hours, and I thought, do I waste another 5-6 hours running this event or save it for another one? Literally 6 weeks later, I went to Gloucester and I qualified for the 24-hour, and that was quite hard to go back into another race with that in my head, thinking, did I give myself enough time? But I was well off target, and I thought, those extra hours, it's not like just you've only got 20 minutes left of a marathon. I walked away, and I don't regret it, and that's the main thing. Don't regret those decisions, and I don't think there's any that I've thought I could have done more.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, everybody. So, I guess all of you here now, we've all learned a huge amount, and there'll be things for you to think about. You'll have races coming up. You'll have things to do. I imagine many of you are members of running clubs already, so you're getting that support, that training. But I think one of the things that's really, really struck me is that sense of the ultra running community, or running community generally, but particularly being such a big community, and the help is there. The fact that these lovely people, I just had to ask them to come along, and they've come along and spoken to you, just shows what it's all about. And so for anybody, if you're looking for that advice, that support with your training, it's out there. At your local running club, if you're not already a member, on people online, you can find that. So I think, we should never feel that, you're going at it on your own, which is absolutely, for me, a very reassuring thing. We're going to wrap it up, the sort of formal bit there. I just wanted to make a few thank yous before we do that. First of all, a big thanks again to Hemel Hempstead Town Cricket Club for hosting us. I'm sure the bar will still be open for a little bit if people want to have an informal chat afterwards, but a big thanks to them. And some thanks to people at Gay Valley Harriers, to Andy Cook, our chairman, for giving me the green light to let this event happen, to Andy Newing for creating a whole new page on our website about ultra running. That shows how serious we are about it, which is a fantastic thing. To Anthony Wilcox, who designed the lovely flyer that we did for free. This is what is wonderful about the running community, people using their talents and doing stuff. And to Chris over there, who's one of our excellent and experienced ultra runners, who's been a big driver of this and has got a lot of it organised, has really supported me through it. So thank you, Chris, for getting that going. But most particularly, a huge thank you to our wonderful panel, to Sam, to Damien, to Anna, and to James. And we've just got a little something to say thank you. It's nothing very special, but we've really just got hopefully to remind you, we have some chocolate brownie biscuits each to keep you fueled on those long runs. This is especially for Damien, some excellent tea, some loose leaf tea. One for each of you there again. I hope you can tea
running club, by the way.
Yeah, I realise that. And then finally,
that's cash in there, right?
There's cash. I don't know how to open it. Oh, here it is. There we go. To remind you of this beautiful area, a little mug with a map of the Chilterns on it for you to drink your tea. So do pass those along. And please, everybody, put your hands together. A massive thank you. Say goodbye. I'm sure everyone will be massively keen to follow your exploits and see what you're doing. Sam, where's the best place to see what you're up to?
Facebook and Instagram.
Facebook and Instagram. Damien?
Instagram.
Instagram, follow you there, yeah. Anna?
Just Strava, I'm rubbish at
Strava. Yeah, Strava for you, and obviously James, people will follow you and enter all your races now.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, brilliant. And finally, as I think I may have mentioned, Damien is an author and has a fantastic new book out. We touched on it a bit today, which talks about the sustainability, the needs for that in running and all that side of things. And he has brought a few copies with him today. So if you would like to grab yourself a copy, don't all stampede at once.
It's quite a
there are
gloomy
some
read.
Sorry?
It's quite a gloomy read.
It's quite a gloomy read, but I think an important one as well. But it's been absolutely brilliant. Do please, if you're able to stay and have a drink and chat with people, please do. All of you be welcome. Thank you all so much for coming. I hope you've been inspired as I have. And happy running, everybody. Well done. Thank you all.